here we go. We don't have Deb here today, which is okay because we have an awesome guest who will definitely make up for anything that Deb would have brought to the table. Now, that being said, I know Deb's really bummed about not being here for this specific guest. That's okay. Deb can finally listen to our podcast once and for all, which we know she doesn't, but maybe finally she will actually download and listen to one of our episodes. Anyways, today we have strength and conditioning coach from Penn State University and the host of the Strength Chick podcast, Jessica Burke. What's going on, Coach?
What is going on? I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited that you're here. Now, do you like being called Coach, or would you prefer being called Jessica? Because I had a conversation. I do a different podcast for coaches and athletes, and which you should have been on. But I wanted to test drive it first here, just in case you're like, I'm never going to do a podcast with this guy again. But I did have one coach tell me one time, like, he's like, you don't need to call me Coach. He's like, my name's such and such. So what do you prefer?
Honestly, I mean, Coach just sounds like so formal, and realistically, all of my athletes call me Jess anyways.
Okay.
So I'm 100% okay with Jess. That is completely fine.
All right, perfect. I'm gonna call you Jess then, because the
Perfect.
last guy, he stopped me in the middle of the podcast. He's like, "Don't call me Coach anymore." I'm like, all right, you should have told me this off air, but we'll keep it rolling. So
Embarrassed me on air. I know.
I know. Like, what are we doing, man? I invited you here, and you just like, messed up my couch in my own house. But that's okay. I let it go. I'm not going to reveal his name, but if you listen to my other podcast, you'll know exactly who it is. Anyways, enough about that. So we always like to start the show off by letting people know how we're connected to our guest, because it's called Connectable. And I was thinking back, I know we follow you on social media, which is the case for most of our guests. We get connected through social media, but I was really trying to think back why we started following you in the first place. And I was thinking it was connected to Kaylee Kellner, who was one of our guests of the year contestants for our end of the year tournament. And I feel like it had to do with that somehow. Do you know Kaylee?
I don't know her personally. I believe, followed her Instagram for a while, just because she's like kind of in a similar space as me and seems to have a similar mentality around exercise and nutrition and things like that. And so she's kind of been somebody that I've always kind of like seen her content and stuff. But yeah, don't know her personally. I would love to, but
Hey, you know what? We can make that happen for
I
sure if
know,
you want.
right?
So that would be awesome, because like I said, it's called Connectable. So the more we can get people connected, the better. So anyways, that's how we're connected. Really, it's through social media. And like I said, you must have voted on the poll or something. And then we started following you. And again, like I said, not just doing this podcast, but then my sports podcast. I'm like, okay, I really enjoy your content for a variety of reasons, which we'll get into. But before we jump into any of that, tell me a little bit about who Jess Burke is, your background, everything that you've done, and then what led you to the point you are today.
Yeah, so I mean, kind of a brief summary, I would say, because it feels like it's been such a long journey. But I mean, initially, none of this was kind of part of the original plan, right? I went off to college. I studied nothing kinesiology, exercise science related at all initially. And I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And it was only when I kind of got out of athletics after, being a competitive athlete for so many years, that I found myself missing the culture, missing kind of the lifestyle, and just being a part of a team and a part of sports. So I kind of worked my way back into coaching. I've been a sport coach for, the last 10-ish years. Coaching high school lacrosse and things like that. And I also, obviously started working with athletes on the performance side, and really kind of fell in love with that process of working with all types of athletes from, all different backgrounds in sports. So as soon as I kind of figured out that that was what I wanted to do, I kind of hit the ground running. I got my certifications. I, went to grad school for kinesiology, just to kind of check the formal education box. And ever since then, I've been really fortunate to work with some really incredible athletes, both in the private sector and then, at places like the University of Michigan, at Purdue, and now where I am at Penn State. So kind of just something that, like I said, was never part of the original plan, but now we're here and I love it. So
That's awesome. And I'm going to try my best to kind of, again, I keep saying it. This is the last time I'll say it. My other podcast, I do talk to coaches and athletes. And so I'm going to try my best to separate that from this. But I have to ask you, one of the questions I would ask over there is, when you have an athlete who played competitively for a long time, you do get to that point where you're at the end of the road, whether it's because of an injury, whether it's because you just, competitively, you can't keep up anymore. Maybe you retire, you've had
Yeah.
a long career as a professional, whatever it may be, there's always the end of the road at some point. And so I always like to hear from athletes that played at a high level and who had to make that decision. Like, what was that decision like? How difficult was it for you to transition out of your sport? And then, was there always a plan? If it didn't work out, was there always a plan to, like you said, you got back into the world of sports, but was that always the plan, or did you have to kind of discover that as you went through that whole, it's almost like a grieving process, right? Like, once the sports career is over, like, what do I do next? And like, was that part of it, or did that come from, did it kind of just hit you that you wanted to do something within sports?
Absolutely. I mean, in terms of me retiring, I think it was just kind of all of the things aligning at the same time, because I didn't like use all of my eligibility or anything. I transferred in the middle of my undergrad, and during that same time, I was actually dealing with a really kind of severe shoulder injury. I had to get surgery, things like that. And I realized that kind of my competitive nature and my heart for lacrosse, I kind of left it with that other team. It wasn't necessarily the sport. It was the team that I left that I was so passionate about and such, so happy to be a part of. And that kind of stacked on top of my injury, and kind of knowing that I would have to do this entire rehab process, in a new place with a new team. I just felt like it was time for me to kind of shut that door. Um, and, as soon as I started coaching lacrosse, which was, those things overlapped. I was coaching high schoolers as I was participating. And I realized that I was, a better coach than I was an athlete. I thought I contributed more as a coach. And that I liked that side of it more. So for that, it was grieving in terms of leaving my team and, those connections and those memories and things like that. But my body was tired, and it's a difficult lifestyle, and so for me, I think it was just kind of the perfect exit. And then just, after you have those connections with your teammates and things like that, those are things that cannot be replicated in any other way, in my opinion. So getting back into sports was something I didn't know I was going to do. Like, I didn't know I was going to do until I left, right? um so there was not a ton of forethought in that, but as soon as I left, I was like, I want to be a part of a team again. So
Yeah. It's interesting that you coached while you were playing, because one of the things I always find fascinating is when an athlete goes back, most of the time they go back after they're done, their career, playing career is done, they go back to coach. And for some people that I've known, it's a really difficult thing, because you have all of that raw passion as a competitor that's still there, and it's still fresh. And if you're dealing with a bunch of high schoolers that don't quite meet that same level of intensity or what you think they should be meeting, it can be a really frustrating thing. But the fact that you were doing it at the same time, was that a difficult thing for you to do? Or, I mean, it sounds like you have a heart and a desire and a passion for coaching, so maybe it was easy for you. But how was that a difficult thing to balance your own competitiveness with what you expected from your athletes?
honestly, I was very lucky in that my first coaching job was with a very, reputable and competitive high school program. And, so that was lucky because I am, because of my athletic career, but also just my personality, I'm competitive by nature. I would say hyper competitive. So it was sometimes it's been difficult to manage in terms of, why don't the kids want it as bad as I think they should want it? But, at the end of the day, it's not about me. It's not about what I want. And, a lot of the work that I do with them, it's my responsibility to make them feel like that about lacrosse, about competing. And so, just kind of putting that lens on of like, I can't do that for them, but maybe I can help them, be as passionate about lacrosse or competing, as I was.
Yeah. That's great. That's a great mentality to have. It's obvious that you have a heart for coaching, because that was like a very good coach answer. You know what I mean? And like
Yeah,
I've heard
I
some people, it's like,
appreciate it.
maybe you shouldn't be a coach. You know what I mean? Like sometimes they answer the question like that. It's like, ooh,
Yeah,
it's probably not going to go
yeah,
well for their
yeah,
athletes. So it's very clear, and that seemed like a very genuine response to that question too. So it's awesome that you have the opportunity to impact the lives of so many athletes, young athletes who are kind of going through that journey right now. I think that's awesome. I am wondering and curious. So, like I said, we've been following you for a while on social media. Um, it seems like there's, and please correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like there's kind of two parts of what you do. You have the athletic side, and
hmm
then there is the more, almost more general, like health side of things. So would that be accurate?
absolutely, yes.
Okay. And so at what point did you decide, hey, I want to jump into this world? Because obviously we mentioned Kaylee earlier, who's doing something very similar. At what point did you realize, okay, I love doing the sports thing, but there's a whole group of people online that could use my knowledge and my insight when it comes to just general everyday health. When did that kind of change for you, or I guess come into the picture for you?
Honestly, I think that my, personal journey with weight loss and health and retiring as an athlete and, becoming a right general population individual versus an athlete, really heavily influenced the type of information I wanted to get out to people. So when I was going through that transition, social media was really kind of exploding in terms of everybody had a fitness Instagram, and there were all these kind of conflicting and really toxic ideologies floating around. And as somebody who had really limited education in the field at that time, I tried everything. I grabbed onto everything that I could. I participated in some things that did not serve me well mentally or physically. Um, and I began, even as I got more educated, I began to see how, this can influence anybody, right? Anyone who looks good and posts information online is now kind of, those people have, five, six, 700,000 followers, right? And so I became really passionate about providing, accurate advice, and things that conflict with a lot of the behaviors that I practiced for years, because I think it is tough when you have that information overload, to kind of sort through it. And me saying it's tough as somebody who has an educational background in it, I can't imagine, for people who are just opening up social media and kind of like, hey, I want to get into the gym, how just intimidating and conflicting all of that messaging is.
Yeah, well, that's the crazy part about social media, right? Like you said, you can find anything and everything, and you can pretty much
Absolutely.
find anything that would support your argument. So I could say, "Hey, why is Pepsi horrible for me?" You'll find a bunch of
Yeah,
information, and then you can find like,
absolutely.
"Hey, why is Pepsi really good for me?" And it's like you can find a whole bunch of information. You don't know if it's credible or not. And I think we've all been there with whether it's a health thing or just anything that we're doing, right? It's when you look for all that information, you have these conflicting things. It really does put you in a bad mental space. And you're not even like doing the stuff that they're saying yet. You're just like doing the research, and it's already put you in a bad
Absolutely.
mental space. So it makes sense why you're so passionate about that, because especially with the field that you're in, I'm sure you see all kinds of just crazy nonsense all the time. In fact, if anybody follows you, I've seen the videos, I've seen the posts, and I wanted to ask you, and I kind of let me phrase it this. Okay, so what is a health trend or a health maybe myth that really bothers you, other than, because anytime we ask, especially if like a female trainer on the show, they always say like
Yeah.
lifting heavy bulks you up. So you can't use
Yeah.
that one. I'm gonna make this a little harder for you, because
Totally
everybody
fine.
everybody says that one. So we believe that one. That's nonsense. Don't even get my co-host Deb started on that one. So if you couldn't choose that one, but you had to choose another like health myth or trend that drives you absolutely crazy, what would it be?
I would just say kind of, and this is funny because I was working on a post about this beforehand, but just kind of like the demonization and the focus on calories, and the calories in, calories out being the equation, and the be all and end all of fitness. Because a lot of people, count their calories and, pay really close attention to that. And they're missing the educational piece. They don't understand the function of their food. They don't understand when they should be eating, why they should be eating. They're just told a number by somebody on a screen, and all of a sudden, they're counting their calories all day. So I know it's definitely not like a myth, and there's a little bit more to it. I could say that, like, eating under 2,000 calories is what bugs me the most, because it definitely is. It definitely bugs me, and I don't think most people should be doing that. But really, just like kind of the fitness experts, touting that weight loss is an energy balance equation and food is calories and nothing more. I think it perpetuates this really toxic view of food, and it has us, trying to like out exercise what we eat, and creates a really big like shame culture around food and high calorie foods and things like that. So I hate it.
There you go. That's perfectly said. That was a great answer. It's like, I knew you'd be ready for that, even if I threw the little curveball, because, I know you've posted about it before, like, hey, something to the effect of, hey, if I lift heavy, I'll get bulky, like as a woman, right? Like you can't lift heavy. Like it's funny. Every time we've had a trainer on, even like my sports podcast, it's always the first thing they say. It's like, this is nonsense. Don't believe it. So like, I had to take that one off the table, and we got an awesome answer.
Fine.
Yeah. We got an
I
awesome
appreciate
answer.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's like, I hope now a little bit of like low hanging fruit is the lifting won't make you bulky thing. I think we're seeing that more on social media.
Yeah.
Hopefully. And so hopefully we've moved past that one,
That's interesting. Yeah. I kind of feel like that's the case. I feel like, I mean, it's just the people I follow on social media, but it seems like that's not as much of a concern anymore.
Yeah.
Which is great. I mean, that means you guys are doing a great job getting that information out there. People are finally listening to that. And even my wife, she's a high school PE teacher as well. And she has kids come up to her all the time asking, hey, if I do X, Y, and Z, and she's like, no, you can probably take out X, Y, and Z. Just forget what you heard about that, because that doesn't make any sense. Yeah. And so it's cool. Like, that's a great point. Like, it's cool to actually see that information kind of infiltrating the culture, the fitness culture, and actually kind of taking root, and people realizing, okay, no, I can be strong, I can lift heavy, be in great shape, be healthy, and not, I can avoid the stereotypes that come with that. So I think that's an awesome thing. I did want to go back to the calorie thing though. Do you think, because I don't know anything about it, I mean, I'll be honest, I use MyFitnessPal. I'm guilty of that type of thing for sure. But do you think the calorie counting, is that a popular thing because it's an easy thing to grasp onto? Like, it's an easy thing for just the common person to track, rather than like truly understanding the science behind what you're eating?
I think it's a popular thing because of the control aspect, because I think a lot of people feel like that's a variable that they can control. And if they're under that goal, then, they should be meeting their weight loss goals. But also, if they're over it, like they have nothing else to blame, right? And so I think it's a step perhaps, but I also see it doing a lot of damage, right?
Sure.
Because for people, it's mostly the people who seek that type of control who get really like addicted to the tracking and things like that. And those are also the people that I often find shouldn't be doing stuff like that, because they get obsessive. And I really think it's a control thing. I think you make a great point about, you don't have to have any education about food to track calories and macronutrients and things like that. But then you see kind of the stupid stuff where people are eating like 900 calories right before they go to bed, and 500 of those calories are protein, and it's just like this ridiculous kind of equation that they're trying to fit their lives into. So I think maybe it's a control thing. I don't know. For me, it was right when I used to do it. So
that would make sense for sure. Yeah, I think that's a great way of putting it. And it's crazy with food too, because when you eat good food, you actually get a lot of food. Like I was doing something a little while ago where it was kind of like a meal plan where I not a order, like where I order it, but like it's like a calendar where it shows what I should eat throughout the day.
Yeah.
It was a lot of food, and it was like, man, I'm eating chicken breast twice a day, rice twice, and it's like at the end of like when dinner time comes, I'm like, I've eaten so much food today. And like when it comes to calories, it's not even that much. So it is a very bizarre thing because I think, like you said, someone could eat some real garbage and they're under their calorie count, but it's nothing good for them. It's nothing nutritious for them. It's not going to benefit their body. And so it's a very bizarre world. I mean, you're in this world all the time, but like it's a very strange, like the ideas that we can get in our head.
Yeah, and I'm glad you bring that up about being, it being like a lot of food. And, I know a lot of people that, um, from back in the day when a lot of my friends used to do the calorie counting and things like that would struggle to even reach 2000 and like clean foods and things like
Right.
that. And I think that's a great point because I think it also emphasizes that like 2000 calories is a lot of calories, right?
Hmm.
And unless you're eating like complete trash, there's not a huge likelihood, or unless you're, drinking a lot of alcohol or, drinking a lot and then, eating stuff that's really not great for you regularly, which, I have no problem in the occasional, 8 beers and a Taco Bell run,
Sure.
everybody's got to do it, right?
Sure.
Um, but, I think it just illustrates that my point a little bit of, it's really easy to eat reasonably enough to be in good shape, right? If you're not kind of all the way off the deep end, because like you said, 2000 calories is a lot of food. And it's not a ton of junk, right? But you can still have those treats and things in there and be under that limit, right? So I think
Yeah.
that's a great point, kind of.
Yeah. Do you remember when Michael Phelps was like first starting his gold medal runs and they would do like all those documentaries
Where
and
you had like
those,
6,500 calories. I know, yeah.
that's insane. And then they would go like they would follow him throughout the day and it's like he would go to practice
They would have like
and
a
then
tally of all
yeah,
the food. Yeah.
like this
Mm-hmm.
massive stack of pancakes and eggs and it's like, oh,
Yep.
I got to eat again. Like, wow. But it makes sense. Like it's a different, like everybody's different. Every, performer is different, what they require. And so it's hard to argue with him. It
Yeah.
seems it worked out pretty well for him. But I just remember
Seems
seeing
like
that.
his dietitian has got it on lock. So
It seems like they've done okay.
yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So sticking around like the food thing, just this is just kind of a silly question, but if you could make, so obviously like the goal would be to eat healthier foods, right? But like you
Yes.
said, the Taco Bell run every once in a while, the beer, whatever it may be, we all have
Yeah.
those things. If you could take one food, like one unhealthy food, and magically make it healthy, like the equivalent of like eating chicken or broccoli, it's like, oh, you go to the doctor and they're like, you know what, you need more chocolate chip cookies in your life because that, what I mean, what would that one food be
Yeah.
that you could just make magically healthy?
That's an amazing question. That's a really good question. I've never really thought about that. I mean, first off, I definitely want to insert the disclaimer that like no foods, in my opinion, are like unhealthy, right? So
Sure,
I don't want to be like, I say this, and then people are like, Jessica said that was bad for me. Because that's not
sure,
true, right?
yeah,
Um,
a disclaimer.
but I mean, I'm a real like snacker. So like chips for me, it would have to be like some sort of chip. Because I feel like I could just get to the bottom of a bag of chips really easily. And then you like
Mhm.
look at the servings and you're just like, oh, it's not good.
Yeah.
So I think chips. I think, yeah.
That's a
Um,
great call.
that would be it for me. So
Man, chips and salsa for me. That's a
yeah.
yeah, it's a problem. Chips and guacamole, chips and salsa. I'm with you. When you look at the bag, you don't look at the bag of chips at first, like the back of it, right? You
Mhm.
just dive
No,
in.
you
And then when
do.
you realize like this bag of chips was meant to serve like 8 people, I'm like, ooh, I
And you
knocked that
eat
thing out.
like 3/4 of it and you're just like, you thought you were being good because you stopped before you ate the whole thing, and then you're like, no, still not great.
Exactly. And
So
then
yeah,
after you read it, it's like, well, I'm almost there anyways. I might as well finish the
just gonna
bag
finish the
because yeah,
chips. Yeah.
the damage is done.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that.
Man, food is such a weird thing. And I enjoy food. I'm not gonna say that I like love food like some people because I know some people like it just they think about food all the time. So
Yeah.
and that would be such a challenge too. So it's cool hearing what you're saying too about not putting anything out, taking anything off the table. Because I'm sure someone
Yeah.
that really struggles with food. It's like I love so many different kinds of foods. I love Italian food, Mexican food, barbecue. I love it all, but I want to get in shape at the same time. Like, how do I balance these two worlds? And so I think the fact that what you're saying is healthy. I think that probably takes some pressure off for some people that are hearing that too.
Yeah, I'm glad because I think everything has a place, right?
Sure.
I wouldn't classify myself as like a total foodie. But growing up, food was a really social experience for my family. And we like to go out to nice dinners and, cook nice things. And so for me, I should never have to like limit that part of my life because it brings me joy and it's how I connect with people. But you even if you are a true foodie, the only sacrifice you have to make is you just can't be a foodie at every meal every single day of your life, right?
Sure.
And it can still completely fit in, and there's sacrifices that you can make. But it really is attainable for everybody, no matter, if, like you're saying, you're one of those people that just loves food and thinks about food all day. There are ways to work with everything.
So since you've been putting this message out there on social media and you've been, doing your podcast, which we'll get to and all that, what's the so it's kind of a two-part question. What's the response been like as far as the positive and
Mhm.
the people that are like, oh my gosh, this is what I needed. Thank you so much. Right. Like the good stuff. And then also we've followed you for long enough and we know that there's haters and you have
Always,
a decent following. And because I mean,
always
let's be
haters.
honest, you're a woman and you put out fitness content like that
Yes,
attracts a certain kind of person as well that feels the need to comment when there's no need to comment, right? And
correct.
so,
Yeah.
two-part question: how do you feel about all the positive interactions you have on social media? And on the flip side, how do you deal with the negative that you receive as well?
I think on the positive end, I mean, I love it. I don't, get anything out of posting content in terms of, I'm not paid to post content. I don't, affiliate with people because I don't believe in like backing something to just to make money off of it, like supplements or things like that.
Sure.
Um, and so there's really no upside other than, connecting with my audience and maybe finding potential clients. So the goal for me is always hearing that, I am saying what somebody needs to hear, right? That's really validating. So a lot of times when I share, um, about my journey and about my struggles and, how I struggled for a lot of years and, how a lot of the stuff that I did was disordered, practices and how, things are confusing for me even at times being, so invested in the fitness world. I get a lot of people that say things like that say, hey, I'm really happy that you shared this. Like you kind of look like you have it all together in terms of your eating and your fitness and things like that. Or, hey, I needed to hear that like this was okay, or this was okay, or that I didn't have to work out every day. So a lot of the positive feedback is just affirming that people appreciate the kind of transparency that I think I offer through my social media. Um, and then, I mean, on the negative side, everybody's always going to have something to say. And I do get a lot of hate both on posts and like through DMs um, from fitness coaches as well that really think that my mindset is like kind of weak, or that it's impossible to get a client results without, having them track every single thing that they're eating, or that my clients should be working out more, or things like that, or that I promote like being lazy and, not being motivated enough, and, just like ridiculous things that it must take these people so much energy to do. And I don't understand it, but I get a lot of hate from that. And then, obviously, there's always like the random guy that drops in to like, tell you that you're fat or ugly or whatever, but, he
Yeah.
can boost my engagement in the algorithm and we'll keep him around. So,
Sure.
so,
That's funny. I've never actually thought about it that way. I've never dealt with it. Our following's not that big, but that's a good point. It kind of does
I
boost
always
the
comment
algorithm.
back too. If you comment back something really nice, usually they'll comment back again, and you just got to keep them around. At that point, they're fans, and so you got to keep them coming back, I suppose.
That's a great mindset. See, there's no weakness in that mindset. That's
That's what I
very
thought,
interesting.
but
That's really interesting. I mean, I guess it shouldn't be surprising that the most vocal, and you didn't necessarily say the most vocal group, excuse me, but a big group of the hate comes from other fitness coaches, which is very bizarre because you would think that out of all people that follow you, they would be the ones that would be the most understanding and the most knowledgeable when it comes to that specific topic. But I guess it goes back to prove your point as far as there's all of this bad information out there and everybody thinks they're right. And people are listening to these people that might think they're right. And so that's what kind of causes that toxic environment
yeah.
in the diet health culture. So it's very bizarre. And the funny thing too is you're a collegiate coach and strength and conditioning coach. So the fact that someone would say, "Hey, and it's not like a small college, it's a pretty pretty reputable college." So it's
Yes.
like that's very strange that that would even be part of the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it comes down to, there's a lot of, I feel like, gatekeeping in the fitness industry, and people feel, like threatened, and, that there's not enough space for online coaches and things like that. And, realistically, I'm a human and I'm wrong about a lot of things, but, a lot of the things that I share on social media are scientific and based in science and upon facts. And so, I won't argue with people who dislike or disagree with those things because they're not really up for discussion.
Right, right, exactly. So why
So
waste your time and energy
yeah,
like they decided to do for themselves? That is, it
exactly.
is so bizarre when you get that long paragraph in the DMs or in the comments.
I
It's like,
know.
how long did this take? It takes me long enough to like write 2 sentences for a caption, let alone a whole paragraph.
I can't even get the energy to like post on my Instagram someday or put a story up. So like the thought of me just scrolling through and being like, wow, I hate this guy, and just DMing a long paragraph, it just
Yeah,
exhausts me truly. So,
yeah,
you know.
it's very strange. I don't understand it, but yeah, it's very strange. But it's yeah, I'm sorry. I just keep going back to this idea that so many people would comment. Well, and the point that you made too is like some people get protective of a space or of their clients, or they think that there's a limited amount of people that would want your services. And again, going back to this idea of our podcast being connection and connecting with people, I think the wild part about that is the reason why there's so many people that can do this health coaching thing is because not everybody's going to like certain personalities. So they may just connect better with you, Jess, or they might connect better with someone else, and that's okay. But the end goal is that they want to develop a healthier lifestyle. But it's like you can't, even if you're a really good coach, it's like why try to be a gatekeeper, because some people are just not going to connect with you as much as you try. So there's something for
Absolutely.
everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I mean, that's a great point because, to be kind of transparent, whenever I hop on a call with a potential client, and, we're discussing what they're struggling with, what I do, one of the first things that I say and that I disclaim is like, hey, I don't work with everybody. And I realize that my mentality and my methodology and my personality is not going to be for everybody. So my goal for this call is, to either say, hey, I think we're a great fit and I think that you would do really well working with me and with my methods, or, I have a pretty big network of fitness professionals, and, I'm more than happy to refer you out to somebody else that I think might be a better fit. And I think that all that does is that enhances the client experience. It enhances your relationship with the client. And so I don't understand why people don't want to have these really good relationships and networks with people in the industry, because I'm not going to be a fit for everybody, and the way that I coach is not going to work for everyone. So I wish more people would kind of operate in the way that there's enough for everybody. And especially, if you're good at what you do, right?
Right. Well, I was going to say it kind of seems like a confidence thing for some people. Like if you're confident in what you do, if you really believe that you are good and passionate about what you do, you should be able to say, like you did, hey, I understand this may not be the best fit. Let me connect you with 4 or 5 other people that might be a better fit, rather than it's like, no. Like I'm gonna fit this round peg into a square, square hole, or whatever the saying is. Like we're gonna
Yeah.
make this thing fit here because I mean, let's be honest, I want your money. It's kind of the
Yeah,
main goal, right? And that's why we're going to try to make this thing work, because I'm not confident enough that I can get another client from somewhere else and pass you off to someone else. So it's a very bizarre world, and I feel like that's a challenge of finding a good coach, I guess, too, right? Is, there's a lot of good ones out there, but there are some that are blocking the way that maybe are a little bit more selfish and self-serving.
absolutely. And I have gotten clients who um, have started working with me after working with other coaches, and they've been resistant because they have had that experience. Where like I have clients that come to me and I'm very upfront and I'm like, hey, we're not going to track your calories, you're not going to work out 6 days a week, like none of this is what we're going to do. Like, you're going to work with me for 6 months and this is going to be a long-term arrangement, and I'm going to help you get where you want to get. If none of that, if you want to count your calories, lose 10 pounds in a month, and say see you later after 6 weeks, like this is not for you, right? And I turn people away because of that, and I feel like coaches miss such a good opportunity to kind of level themselves up and level up their business by, like you said, being like, hey, no matter what, I want your money, because that doesn't work out well for anybody. So
Right. You can see through it for sure. And it's not that difficult to tell who's in it for the actual impact on someone's life versus the impact on their bank account. And not that you can't make money, but those two things have to go hand in hand. Otherwise, it's just not, like you said, it's not going to work. Now, when you're
absolutely.
talking to someone, you're saying, "Hey, we're not going to count calories." Um, do they? Have you gotten anybody that's like, "Oh, this sounds good," and then they realize how much work they put in? It's like, wait a minute, this is not what I thought. I thought this was going to be easy. Like, do you ever get that?
um I No, and I think it is because I really think that, and this wasn't always the case, right? This is a process. So I'm not going to come on here and be like, my business has been perfect since day one, because
Sure.
this has been like an 8 year like battle, right?
Wow. Yeah.
I think I've gotten really good at attracting the kind of client that resonates with that approach. So most of my clients, I say that they're in a state of like diet culture fatigue, right? Where they've tried everything, and me saying to them, hey, we're not going to count calories. I have a registered dietitian on staff who's going to teach you about nutrition and how to fuel your body, and you're never going to have to diet ever again in your entire life. Most of them are like, holy crap, let's go. Like, I am in. I don't
Yeah.
want, I want to delete my fitness pal today. So I get a lot of people kind of in that headspace, um because I feel like, as I've gotten a little bit older, like I started doing this in my early 20s, and now I'm 30. I've like kind of transferred a little bit from the clientele of like, I want to be skinny, to like, I've had kids, like I'm tired, I don't want to count my calories, my kids won't eat what I eat, like what can I do, like, or how can I make my life better, or how can I stop thinking about food, or things like that. So I feel like I never really experienced resistance, or a lot of shock, which is nice. I feel like it's usually people being like, oh my goodness, that sounds immaculate, like let's do this.
That's awesome. That's very
So
cool. What would you say is your I'm sure it's all across the board, but what would you say is your main demographic? Like the amount of people that reach out to you, what demographic do they fall in?
I definitely, like you said, all across the board. I would say for the most part, like late 20s, early to mid 30s women for the most part, which I do also have male clients, but just more of my followers are women, and I think my content resonates a little bit more with women, just because it's so diet culture
Sure.
um based. um but and I would say most of them at some point were competitive athletes, or kind of did something competitive, that they haven't done. So I get a lot of people that, when they were younger and healthier, like they did CrossFit or they did martial arts. And, like I said before, now they've had kids, and they're kind of relearning how to move and relearning their bodies a little bit, which I think, you have to do when you kind of cross that 30 line, whether you've had kids or you haven't. It's a whole different ball game than when you were 18 and playing a sport. So a lot of it, I will say, is that. And then more recently, which is great because, it means that my content is more accessible, is people that have never worked out before in a formal setting,
Really?
which is really exciting for me because, obviously I love taking care of former athletes and helping them, but especially, being somebody who can bring someone into this world is really great. And I'm really lucky that my clients kind of trust me with that. So.
That's awesome. Well, and like I kind of said this before, I imagine that, like we all do, we scroll through social media, you see different things. It has to be such an exciting feeling for some of the people that you work with, or maybe they just follow you. Maybe they don't directly work with you, but they just follow you. They're like, this is what I've been looking for. Like I've been looking for someone who, loves the strength and conditioning aspect of it, is not a slave to the diet culture, all these crazy trends and fads. Like it's got to be such a breath of fresh air for people to see that. So I think it's awesome what you're doing, even if they never worked with you, directly, and they're just following what you do. It's still a great service, and it's still great content that you're providing for everybody that follows. So, um, I think that's great. Especially, obviously, like I said, I do have a heart for athletes, and I think especially for athletes who are getting out of it, like we said before, that transition can sometimes be hard. And a big part of it is the changes that your body goes through, because you're not on this rigid schedule of training, this rigid, everything is laid out for you. So you kind of have to relearn everything as a normal citizen again, right? Not an athlete who's been doing it
Absolutely.
as a job. It's like, what is this
Yeah.
world? And so, like, I've heard that from multiple people, like the health side of it plays such a huge role in it. So the fact that you're helping guide them back to just like a normal, healthy life is pretty cool.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I think that that's kind of what um, makes my job so fun because I'm really lucky to work with athletes every single day that I really love and I really care about. And then I know how I felt when I was an athlete, graduating. I know how some of my athletes feel, the amount of DMs that I get from athletes that I worked with like 6 months after they graduate, and they're just like, please help. So, knowing that like I'm kind of helping to fill that gap a little bit because there still is a need, but helping that transition and make it as seamless as possible is important to me. So.
Awesome. So let me ask you this: how do you scratch the competitive itch these days? Are you still competing in different things, or are you just kind of like out of it completely? You just train. Like, what do you do? Because I know it's still in there. Is it board games? It could just be like board games, just
You
like
know,
throwing down
a,
Monopoly.
a lot of it is living a little bit vicariously like through some of my athletes, right? So I mean,
Okay.
watching them perform and watching them compete is awesome. I work with women's lacrosse here at Penn State. We're still in season. We're about to go to the NCAA tournament.
Nice.
And then, I worked with women's gymnastics this year, which was the first time I've ever worked with that sport. And the kind of excitement that I had about that, and amount that I just got into that on meet days was pretty unreal. So I'd say watching them compete and watching them succeed definitely kind of like scratches that itch. Um, and then honestly, I think I've just kind of channeled that energy into what I do. I decided what I wanted to do at a really late age in terms of like relative to this profession, right? Because so many of the people that I work with got these internships and they were like 19 or 20. They're like, I want to be a strength coach. I've always wanted to be a strength coach. And then, here I am at like 25, 26, 27, working for free. And then, 28 years old, getting my graduate degree, and really, attempting to coach at the highest level that I can coach at. So for me, just being a part of, right now being a part of Penn State, um, it definitely this kind of grind to get here definitely has satisfied my competitive itch a little bit. And then I just keep kind of learning and getting better every day and hoping that I can show up as a better coach tomorrow for my athletes than I did today. So I think there's a lot of competition still left in me in that sense.
I can see it. I can sense it and feel it too. It's like there's definitely competition in there, but it's awesome that you have so many different outlets where you can get that out. Because usually it's like I play like slow pitch softball, or they play like flag football on the weekends. It's like that's how they do it. Which
Yeah.
I played in enough of those leagues to know not always the best idea for some of those guys. A little too
Yeah.
intense, and
A
they're
little too
grown men that are
much.
doing this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. A little too much.
I've seen it. It's tough too, and especially you get to like I played in some adult baseball leagues after I graduated high school, and it's bizarre when you start playing with these guys who are in their like mid to late 30s, and they have kids that are watching, and they lose their mind on the field. It's like, hey, you can't. You have a job you have to go back to tomorrow, and your kids are watching. Like, what are we doing?
Where
So
like everybody else is playing like 2 beers deep, just like having the time of their life, enjoying their Wednesday night. Yeah, no,
yeah,
it's not a great look to be that one guy. So I'm never gonna, I personally, it's not for me. Um,
probably better that way.
so
Yeah, probably better that way. It's fun. I
yeah,
enjoy it still, but like you said, you do find that one guy.
you
It's a
do.
it's a tough look, but we don't need to keep going down that road. That could be a different episode. Before we get out of here, because I want to make sure I'm respectful of your time, because you are on the East Coast.
No worries.
Um,
All good.
so your podcast, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to be completely honest with you. Normally, I do a better job of like listening to some of the episodes. I listened to an episode a long time ago,
All
and
good.
then haven't done it since. So that's on me. But like I said, it is the Strength Chick podcast. What made you decide you wanted to do a podcast, and then what was the response like once you started doing it?
So I will say disclaimer, you don't have to apologize because after like several episodes, I took kind of a pause throughout the season. So I've been pretty bad about posting new episodes lately. So you don't have to feel bad. You haven't missed out on too much. But I am kind of restarting that. I think I definitely underestimated what women's lacrosse season would look like in terms of just
Sure.
time on the road and time doing stuff. Um, but really, I mean, Instagram, TikTok, all that stuff is great for this short form content. And as I'm sure you can understand, because operate 2 podcasts, and your podcast is built on this. I really wanted a way to connect a little bit deeper and to impact a little bit more. So where a lot of my videos and stuff may have like a catchy hook, and it's like, here's why you shouldn't do this. 90 seconds of information just isn't enough for people to be educated on the topic. And the way I see it, the more kind of avenues I can put value out there in, the more chance I have of kind of breaking through that noise. So a lot of the stuff we talk about on the podcast, and we have some guest episodes coming up with people, some of my clients, some people I work with, things like that. But a lot of it is really just talking about either some of the more controversial topics, or my own, personal journey, and just exposing myself and the thousands of mistakes, that I made along the way, in hopes of helping other people avoid them. And just really kind of popular myths and diet culture concepts that people could completely squash in their own minds if they just kind of knew the science behind it. So I try to make it as like not intimidating as possible, in terms of anyone can listen to it and understand all the concepts. It's not like super sciencey. It's not over the top. It's definitely meant for people who just want a better grasp on some of these concepts. So
Awesome. Very cool. And I completely agree with you. I think I love podcasting. We've done it for a little over 4 years at this point in different forms. But for me, it's always been a cool way of connecting. Like you said, 90 seconds on Instagram or TikTok, which I hate TikTok. We have it. I don't feel good about it. I held off for the longest time. And then
I
someone
did
that's,
too.
oh, but you do have it?
Yeah, I held off for so
Man.
long, and then I just kind of started getting into it. I'm still not sure, but
But
you
your
know,
content's a lot better than ours. Like I've seen your stuff for a while. Like it makes sense. And you could have fooled me. It's like you're good at what you do. For us, it's like we post some clips. I hate TikTok so much. I don't like being on it. It just drives me nuts. I don't know what it is. I guess I'm too old. I'm 34. I'm like, maybe it's just beyond
I
me.
feel too. I am 30, and I every time I scroll on there, I'm like, are these kids 18? Like, is my ideal client really hanging out on TikTok? Because I'm not hanging out on TikTok. So
Yeah, no, I don't understand it. So good for anybody who does it. I don't enjoy it, but like I said, we have it. Someone who does a really good job with social media suggested we do it. So once he said that, I'm like, dang, now
Dang, we got to
guess I
get
got to
it
do
together.
it. But I'm
Yeah.
not happy about it. So, anyways, but yeah, um, I completely lost my thought. I don't even know where I was going with that thought.
I don't know what you're talking. I don't know.
I don't know. It wasn't worth it. See, TikTok got me again. I let it control my life. It's not good. Let me ask you this: do you enjoy social media overall? Because like we talked about, like you deal with the positive, you deal with the negative. In overall, do you enjoy like creating content? Do you enjoy interacting, or is it something that you feel like you have to do because people are there, and because it's a good way of promoting what you do?
I think that answer is definitely twofold. So, with my job, there are some days that are really long, right? And the thought of going home and showing up on a video, or, coming up with a content, like all my brain cells have been used, all of my energy is spent. And I've already kind of yelled in a room full of athletes for, 6 or 7 hours, and I'm tapped out. So there are days that it does feel like a chore. And I think that's important to talk about, because I think people see, and not even someone like myself, because I don't have like a massive following or anything, but people that see people on social media and assume that it's like this easy, like I just show up and, talk, and I don't, sit here and come up with ideas and script everything and think about what trends I'm going to do and what audios I'm going to use. So I definitely want to say, like, some days it is really, really tough. And mentally, sometimes it's tough because, while I've gotten really good at kind of understanding that I'm not going to be everybody's cup of tea, there are those days where you get home, you feel like crap, and then you like open up your phone and it's like you're an idiot, and and it's just like nobody
Sure,
wants it, right? Nobody wants
sure,
to see that about themselves. Um, but I think what it has done is it has, um, I have a deep appreciation for it, because it really has connected me with a lot of people. I've met a ton of my clients on there, and a lot of them feel like the work that we've done together has really, changed their life for the long term. And without social media, that wouldn't be possible. So every time I'm kind of dreading, getting on and posting a video or something like that, I just have to think of the long term and the possible impact, even though it's not really um immediately apparent, right?
sure.
So two sides to that sword, I would say.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let me ask you this: since you do the podcast, you do a lot of reels and stuff like that on Instagram. Are you used to the sound of your voice? I know most people are like, I hate the sound of my voice so much. For me, I edit this podcast, so I kind of got used to it at a certain point. I'm like, you know what, this is what I sound like. I can't stress about it because I have to listen to this, and I've been listening to my own voice for 4 years. It doesn't get any better. Like for you, is it like, oh, I don't want to do this again, or are you just like, I'm good with it? I know what I sound like. I'm fine with it.
I used to hate it. I really did. And that was back when, like, all of the content on here was like short form and trends and like not a lot of value. And so I would
Sure.
rarely talk. And within the last couple of years, I've gotten more comfortable kind of talking on my stories and everything. I also edit my own podcast, which, like, having a good microphone helps. It helps me not hate myself as much.
Same with me.
Um, but I think I've gotten used to it. I think it's just kind of, I used to cringe at certain things, but I think, people know what I sound like, and I don't mind it as much anymore. It doesn't sound as weird. I just, I edit all my videos and all my podcasts, so
Yeah.
I hear myself a lot.
I'm in the same boat as you. It always so it's good to know because when I post clips of this episode, I know I'm not going to get something from you saying, "Hey, I hate my voice. Why did you
I'm
post
used to
that?"
it.
We
I'm
get that
used
every
to it.
once in a while, and it's like I don't know what to do. I'm not an
Like,
audio
well, you were on
engineer.
a podcast, so I don't. Your voice was going to be out there.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying. It's like, what'd you expect? Like this is what
yeah,
again, I have to listen to myself every single week for 4 years. Doesn't get any
yeah.
better. My poor wife is like, I've heard it for longer than that. I don't
That's
enjoy
true.
it either.
Yeah,
You know what I
that's
mean?
true.
So
The good thing she doesn't edit your podcast, because you'd be. That'd be a
Yeah.
tough go.
Yeah. She would never. Yeah.
You wouldn't be able to talk at home. You wouldn't be able to do it.
She honestly, she might just cut my mic as she's editing. She's like, you know what? Anything he says, just drop that audio, let Deb speak and the guest speak. The world doesn't need his nonsense or his voice. So that's a great point. I'm going to share that with her after we're done here. So anyways, well, hey, this has been a fun conversation. I appreciate you taking some time out of your busy schedule to chat with me. Like I said, I've done a pretty good job of trying to avoid a lot of the sports questions I have for you, but like this side of my brain is like going crazy because I have a ton more. But I'm gonna avoid that right now because like I said, I want to be respectful. But if people want to get in touch with you, if they want to follow you on social media, your podcast, website, whatever you have, any way they can get in touch with you, where can they follow you?
Yeah, so everything is Coach J Burke, so Burke, and that's my Instagram and my TikTok, and that's where I post most of my stuff. And I read my DMs, I answer my DMs. So if anybody has questions, I love to connect. I love to answer questions for people, and I love to know what people need in terms of information, and it helps me kind of inform my content and things like that. And then the Strength Chick podcast is on Spotify, it's on Apple Podcasts, so you can kind of listen to that as well, and I'll be picking back up with that here now that the season is kind of coming to an end. So
awesome. Make sure you follow Jessica or listen to the podcast. Be ready when it drops with more episodes, all of that. You will not be disappointed. She's a great follow and has a lot of great information for you guys to listen to and see. So Jessica, thank you so much again, and good luck with everything moving forward.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for watching the show. If you enjoyed that episode, make sure you like it, share it, and hit the subscribe button to get a new episode every week. We'll see you next time on the Connectable podcast.